definitely want to squeeze out as much intel as I can from you on some of the pieces still available. Notably, Mikko Rantanen. We get it. It's fascinating that he's already been dealt well ahead of the deadline, and now we have this scenario where he could get dealt again. What are you hearing on him? There was a report that came out over the weekend that Los Angeles could be a possibility. Darren Drecker's been on that. What's the latest on him?
Well, where we're at is that Mikko Rantanen has indicated to the Hurricanes that, there's sort of no decision on his contract. This isn't about money at this point. It's not about anything else, really. I think just, he's not ready to engage in contract negotiations. And so the ball's really in Carolina's court. And, where the Hurricanes are at is I still think that their number one goal would be to sign him. They're not going to be able to do that by the deadline, obviously, in the coming days here. So, the best way for them to do that, of course, is to play out the season, see what happens in the playoffs, give him more time to get comfortable and rally with the team, with the culture, with everything they might have to sell, and attempt to sign him at some point before July 1st. Because, if he remains with Carolina, they're the only team that can give him that 8th year, and they have the inside track because they have all the months between now and July 1st to have those kind of conversations, at least above board, with his agent and with Mikko, and try to make that work. Now, that doesn't rule out that other teams can't call, and I think that's where you see a report like the one that you're referencing with LA. I think that the Kings certainly are one of the teams that have called Carolina. They're certainly not alone, just to see would there be a deal that makes sense. And, I think at this point, Carolina's position is we got to listen to those calls because they can still make a trade, of course. They have to see maybe if there's something that could come together, maybe something you and I might think is a crazy offer comes across their desk. And so, I guess I don't know fully what those offers are going to be, what might still happen, right? Teams might strike out on some players. Once we get more names coming off the board, there could be a scenario it happens. I don't think it's the likely outcome, which you can probably tell by the way I'm leading into this answer. But it can't be ruled out entirely. And so, at this stage, I don't get the feeling or the sense that Carolina's like, okay, we can't sign him, we have to move him. It's not like that. But they're going to listen on the calls that come in. I'm sure that if someone puts something enticing, it would take something awfully enticing, put it that way, for the conversation to get too deep, I think. And so, where does that leave Mikko Rantanen? He's got some limited trade protection in his contract. He's sort of told the Hurricanes or informed them that there's going to be no contract decision or talk before Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And so now everyone waits. And, I think he's very, very likely to stay in Carolina for the rest of the year. But who knows? I mean, maybe someone does something goofy because that's what makes a trade deadline fun. Basically, every trade isn't always, it's not always in the air, we'll call it. Sometimes we do get taken off guard. You only have to look at the Thomas Hertl deal to Vegas at last year's deadline. I remember years ago, was it Anthony Mantha, Jacob Verana came totally out of nowhere on the last day. Maybe something comes out of nowhere in Carolina. But where it stands right now is he's not signing with the Hurricanes before the deadline. They're listening to calls, and that's kind of where it's at. I don't have any sort of sexy names to throw at you. I mean, look, if some team was willing, if the Leafs were willing to throw Mitch Marner at them, maybe there's a conversation, but that's not a real rumor because,
right.
Mitch Marner has a no movement clause. The Leafs are still hoping to sign Mitch Marner long-term, so, barring something like that coming out, I think he remains a Hurricane, and the deal they made back on January 24th ends up being what we thought it was at the time, rather than kind of this diversion that it's taken here in the last 2 weeks.
Still would be fun for, the drama, the chaos, if Mikko Rantanen does end up getting moved. But there's a part of me that does want to see him stick around in Carolina, figure out a way to produce a little bit more. He was productive in the Hartford Whalers jerseys the other night, which, by the way, those jerseys look amazing.
They're having a moment again, eh? I mean, these last couple seasons, I know the Hurricanes have used them on Whalers night. Must be a little sacrilegious if you're a fan. You know what I mean? And I know Colorado's used the Nordique sweater. I think maybe just briefly when they had those, like, what do they call those sweaters? You know what I'm talking about? They had like
the reverse retros?
The reverse retros. But it'd be weird if you're a fan and like, not only did you lose your team to Carolina and they renamed them and whatever, then they're wearing, the Washington Nationals don't wear that Expos logo that you got on your hat right there for those that are watching us rather than just listening.
They've worn like some kind of, I don't know if it was during spring training, but I think they've done that before.
Right. But you know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of,
it's not something they would do every day.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking to rebrand like the Utah Hockey Club probably is not going to dust off the Kachina, at some point. They're not probably going to clap back to that history. Maybe, but again, maybe in enough years, 10, 15, 20, I don't know what the number is. I mean, it's been a long time since the team moved down to Raleigh. But anyway, I'm with you, though. I love the Whalers sweater. Apparently, it sells really well, like in stores still. Like I read a story somewhere. I wish I remember who wrote it. That there's been like a renaissance. Like people who don't even know what the logo is. Like they're not being ironic or anything. They are buying that jersey up and buying hats up with that logo just because it's so cool.
It's one of the more classic like sports logos you could tap into. So I'm glad that it's getting a second lease on life. I think in Pierre LeBrun's setup, like when I see him on TSN, he has the logo somewhere. I don't remember what it's for, not what it's for, but I don't remember like how, like if it's on a hat or whatever, but I know he has that logo.
He's got it. And there was a time he had Brass Bonanza as his ringtone on his cell phone.
Oh my God.
He doesn't have it anymore. I think he's got a hip song. Maybe I can't remember, but he used to have Brass Bonanza. Like when his phone rang, it was like, do, 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 do. That's an annoying.
Please don't copyright us. Please don't copyright us for that.
We didn't play the music. We just hummed something that may or may not sound like it.
Just want to make sure. We don't trip off any alarms.
But yes, Mikko Rantanen in a Cane sweater, in a Whalers sweater. I think, that just seems to be where it's going to go. But 5 days still, 4.5 days till the deadline. Still time maybe to be surprised.